You are listening to Inspired Caring with Michelle Magner, episode number 151. Hello, welcome to Inspired Caring. I'm your host, Michelle Magner. If you are caring for an older family member, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I bring insight, tips, inspiration, and strategies to help you care for the people that you love without losing yourself along the way. Having cared for both of my grandmothers, I've helped manage everything from hospital stays, households full of belongings, to navigating senior living and end-of-life care. And I've worked in senior living as a result of that experience, serving my residents and their families as they've been on this journey too. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Inspired Caring. Wendy Tridle with Organized by Design. I'm so pleased to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we had a very dynamic, long conversation a while back. And so I'm just hoping we can recreate that today for the listeners to give them an understanding of what it is you do and really the benefits and value of bringing someone like you into their family situation. So let's just start with, what is your story?
Yes. So, Organized by Design, I started the company 15 years ago, and with the idea that I was going to help organize. Before that, I stayed home with my family, and I would have my neighbors come over and say, "Hey, could you come help me organize my pantry?" And then I have another neighbor say, "You have an interior design degree. Can you help pick out paint?" So I started the business with the idea of that I'm going to help people organize. And then I did that for several years on my own. And then I started adding more people to the mix and started had a fantastic move into a senior community where I was helping them organize. And then it just revolved around moving. So we help people pack up, downsize, and then we help them set up their space. So it's a whole process. And I always tell people use whatever services you need. So a majority, I would say 80% of our business is the moving aspect of it. So we just help those. Lots of times it's a senior that, maybe had some health issues, or I always say the example of grandma falling and breaking a hip, and now she's in rehab and she can't go home and she has to go to assisted living. So it's a lot of emotional. It's a lot of hand holding. And we just take into consideration and love those seniors as one of our own parents, and get them downsized, get them moved and set up so they can walk in the day of a move and everything is ready for them to use. So that's where it kind of came from. I would say it really revolved around COVID. People didn't see their parents. And then after COVID started opening up the doors, then the children were like, we need to move mom or dad into a new community. So then I was like, I started getting really busy, and now I have a team of 17 people. So it has really revolved into a business instead of more of a hobby, which is exciting and scary at the same time.
I mean, you reduce so many of the aspects that are so overwhelming for family members, and then you have this interior design piece, which feels like such a bonus on the other side of setting people up. So when people are reaching out to you, what are they feeling is like the most overwhelming aspect of this? Or are there just like a top 3 things that people are really struggling with?
Well, I think the struggle lots of times when I don't want to say generational, but it is. Generational is that they have things that they either their parents had and they need feel ownership to keep it or to downsize. So it's just hard to let things go. So I would say that that is the biggest thing. I mean, that could answer all three items, but like they feel like they have to keep the items from their parents, and they just feel weighted and overwhelmed with the
Mhm.
stress of just basically you don't need this. You don't need to hold on to your, I don't want to say deceased, but usually you don't have to feel obligated to keep your china or crystal or whatever it might be. So, yes. So that's the biggest struggle. And then, of course, it's always too late. I'm sure you can relate to that. Um, when you move into a community, when you ask somebody what their most regretted thing is that they usually say that they waited too long. So they just feel, like um they should have done it sooner, or even enjoy the independent living side of community.
Let's talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit more, because that is, you're right. Just having worked in a building, that was something that we definitely felt, because the people, as they were moving in, their health had just declined so much. And once someone moves in, we can usually get them back to a pretty good spot, but not maybe to where they were. So when is it the person who moved in that is feeling like it was too late? They wish they would have done it sooner, or is it their adult child that's feeling like they wish they would have done it sooner?
I think usually it's the senior themselves feel like they should have done it sooner. Lots of people say when they retire that they're going to go through and organize and downsize their items. And then it's 10 years later, and I step in and their health is declining or situations happen. And
Mm.
then they're like, "Well, I should have done it sooner. I should have done this when I said I was going to retire." So usually it's the senior that has that comment. Um, yeah. So.
And the downsizing is one thing, and then the transition to senior living is another. Do you think if they would have started the downsize process sooner, I mean, it obviously would make it easier to make a move to senior living.
Right, right. And that's what we see, like, even, our client yesterday that we were helping, they lived in their house for 33 years, and, not that it has a number on it, but, the longer you're in a home, I think that the longer you keep items,
Mhm.
and so we are, had lots of trash, lots of donation, lots of things that we I feel like we dug up from the buried in the closet that they didn't even know that they had.
Mm.
And some of the items that were interesting is that they had a 40-year-old son, and they had all of his they had probably 10 totes of his. It was like, he's an adult. He should be able to manage and care for those items instead of storing them at mom and dad's house.
Right.
So,
You don't need to store his third grade soccer medal.
right. Yes, yes. And I talk to them about it, and we coach them on, you are going to go into a one bedroom independent living community. You do not need to fill up your closet full of his third grade items.
Mm.
So we just talk through that, and they're like, you know what, you're right. It seems like it should be such an obvious thing, but sometimes people just need somebody else to just tell them that it's okay to get rid of it. It's okay to feel like you don't have to have that ownership of it anymore.
You mentioned the China, and I think before there was really a push on heirloom items. Like certain
Mhm.
furniture manufacturers would say, well, this is an heirloom piece of furniture. That's why we're going to charge more because we're going to be able to hand it down. And so with the china, my stepmother has 3 sets of china. She has 9 grandchildren, a mix of boys and girls. And I mean, they're younger, they're teenagers, but all of them are like, no, we don't want that.
Yes. So I get calls all the time. I would say 2 to 3 calls a week and say, this is my thing. I have a really nice set of china and I know that my family doesn't want it. Okay, yes, they don't I mean, there is people that do use china or whatever, but most family members do not. They have more of a contemporary home and they want to be simplify, or they want to have the items that they're going to be using in their home.
Mm.
So they said, I just don't know what to do with it. It's valuable. It's 50 years old. And I said, well, why don't you take it with you and use it? Well, it's got lead in it. And I was like, well, then it's not even usable. So that's one conversation. And then the conversation might be like, well, I think it's worth something. I think it was worth something 50 years ago when you purchased it or when you got it. But today the I would say we work with about 5 to 10 people a week that have an abundance of china and crystal, and they're trying to get rid of it. Um, I have one story that I have is I helped a gentleman. He was like 95. His wife had passed 5 years before that, and he actually was in an independent moving to an assisted living. So he had his top shelf was full of china and crystal and everything. And um he said, well, let's just put it on the shelf and we'll have the my kids, my daughter and my son, decide what they want and they can take it. And the son walks in. I can't, I think his name is Mark, but Mark walks in and I said, this is all your stuff. And I showed him and he backpedaled to the out the door and he's like, I don't think I want it. Well, what's interesting to go back is that when we came, the gentleman that was 95 years old said to his son, he said, where's your wife? And he said, oh, she had an appointment, so she's not able to come. So she didn't want the stuff. It was obvious. And then Mark just backpedaled out of the door. And I said to him, I said, you don't have to take it. I mean, but it was a good opportunity for you guys to see all the things that he had, and if you want any of it. So that's what we try to do and say, sometimes it's just to pass it on to somebody. Like the gentleman passed it on to his son, and his son made a decision that he doesn't want it. So I coached the 95-year-old man and I said, if your son doesn't want this, are you okay if we donate it? And he said, yep, that's great. So we already made that plan before we engaged his son. So there's just little tricks and little ways to do it. And we try to donate anything that's donation worthy. So it might be something where somebody's trying to decide if it's trash or donation. And I'm like, let's just donate it. Let's donate it. The clothing to donation site, and if they can't use it, they'll give it to People City Mission, and People City Mission sells the fabric. So there's always different ways to maneuver and figure out things. But what I find is that most people, they have this block wall when they talk about crystal and china, or they talk about my block yesterday was the lady was trying to sell her bar stools. I'm like, nobody wants just 2 bar stools that you bought a year ago, and nobody's going to drive they live out of town to come get them. And she doesn't know how to do link and sign or sell on Facebook, whatever, all the sites. So she doesn't do it. She doesn't do well with internet. So, we talk, she's like, what are we going to do with those bar stools? What are we going to do with those bar stools? And I say, well, if they're left we will figure out, the movers can drop them off at donation,
Mhm.
or we can see if I have contacts. Sometimes I get people calling like Friendship Home or different places saying we need items to house. But what happens is that that's all she could think about was those bar stools. I was like, let's worry about everything, the
Mhm.
95% of things. Let's don't put this brick wall of china in front of your face that you can't focus on the rest of your house. So I always tell people the things that, yeah, those are great to bring up at the beginning of a consultation, but let's set the china aside, and then let's do everything else, and then we'll come back to it
Mhm.
and try to give it to your kids or donate it,
Mhm.
or get figure out where it needs to go at the end. And by that time, they're usually like, just donate it.
Yeah. So removing that barrier on the front end
Right.
and then circle back to it. What about like sentimental items? So an example in our family was my husband had a great aunt who did needlepoint, and she did this really beautiful needlepoint picture that she had given to my mother-in-law. Well, my mother-in-law and father-in-law both had passed away. So we had this needlepoint that the adult children, like we actually felt okay um, donating that, because we figured, oh, it's going to go to a good place. But so my mother-in-law was still alive. My father-in-law, he was like making the decisions. He like was very stuck on that needlepoint because it had so much meaning, because it was his aunt who had done it for his wife, so things like that, like the quilts and things that feel very sentimental, but maybe weren't expensive or heirloomy. Oh my God, how do we get through those conversations?
It's hard. It is hard.
Yeah.
And usually it's has to do, like when I work with clients, there's a lot of trust there. Um, but they get to a point where they're like, their health is more important than worrying about that quilt. I mean,
Yeah.
really, that's the thing, is that, and sometimes I always tell the seniors, um, you know, just offer it to your niece or offer it to your family, and then give it to them, but don't ask them where it is, or want any connection with it. If you've given it to somebody, then it should go like that. Just accept that you've given it up and that they are responsible to do what they want. So,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, I love that you do that, because we were on this path with my father-in-law where I swear he was trying to move his house into our house one pie plate at a time. And he brought over some video equipment or whatever because of our kids' hobby, and we accepted the item. And then he asked about it like months later, and the technology was just like super outdated. And we had obviously pulled off anything that was valuable family related from the piece of equipment. But anyway, he asked about it, and we were just like, oh no.
Yeah. I just tell them, if you've given something to somebody, then you have given that item over, and um then you're done with it.
Yeah.
And I think, like when we coach, when we go through that, we tell them, we like, okay, we're going to make a pile. Okay, back to Mark. We're going to make a pile for Mark that he's going to go through when he gets here. And then this is going to be for Carol. This one's going to, like we make piles for people. And then I'm like, okay, now the rule is if once it's done, once they decide, then, then you move on. You don't even look back. You don't even talk about it. So, like yesterday, the guy was in the storage unit, and he said he had this little rocker that he used when he was younger. I mean, he's in his 70s, might be 80s, and it's broken, and it's an heirloom. And he said, yeah, it was like, and I said, you know what? You just shared that story with your son, and that's great that you shared that story, but it's not usable, and it's just going to take up space. And he said, yeah, you're right. It's time to get rid of it. And it, of course, it's not even donation worthy, but
Mm.
made that decision. And lots of times I say, okay, let's just get rid of it. And then we decide if it's donation or trash. We don't want to say to somebody, oh, trash that because it's 70 years old and it's broken. We kind of take it to heart, and we're respectful of their items, even though it might end up in the in the trash or garbage.
And you have resources. So, like, part of the benefit of hiring you is that you are able to determine the value of certain items, where certain items would benefit. I feel like I've heard that throughout that different nonprofits that will accept what types of things. So that is definitely a benefit of bringing
Yes.
you in to help with this.
Yes. Oh, yes. Because lots of times that's where people struggle is. Or the other thing that we provide is we do provide a service. So we usually do a 3 hour organization or downsizing session, morning or afternoon, or it's either all day. So all day is usually the day of the move, the day before the move. So we kind of gradually get into it. We help with deciding where things go. So what we usually do after our organizing or downsizing session, we will take the things away. Like, it, as long as it can fit in our cargo van, we will load up our van full of donations. So I always tell people when I do a consultation before the session, I always tell them, okay, this is the idea. We're going to hopefully do it the day before trash day. Mentally, that makes it sound like, okay, we're going to really kick this room or this area in gear when they're here. And we're hard workers and we'll do it. So we usually say, okay, schedule the day before the trash. The next thing is that we want to make sure that um, any donation we will take. So if you say, we just usually say a one donation site. So, if we're cleaning out a library or an office with a whole van full of books, we know we can't take that to the libraries. But if we have one or two boxes of books, then yes, we can take that and donate it to the libraries. Or maybe it's something where they have a connection with, like, a gentleman that we helped a couple weeks ago. He's a pastor, and he's like, these all should go to the church. I'm going to make a call, take them to the church. Perfect. We'll make that donation happen. So yes, so we are very resourceful. Yesterday we cleaned out a storage unit and they had Christmas decorations, and I was like, I know you can't donate Christmas decorations right now. Nobody has space in there to store this until the fall. So just knowing those kind of things, we can provide that information to them too.
How are families getting along? Like, are you at all tangled up in the conversations with the adult children and the senior that's moving?
Yes, and often I feel like most of the people uh don't have, not the support. I would say some people have great support, but it's distant. Or like the daughter calls me from Florida and needs help, and she feels terrible she can't be here, or she has conflicts, whatever. People are busy,
Mhm.
and most of the time the seniors understand that. So my clients know that they don't want to interfere with their lives, and they've had to deal with a lot of change up to it. So this is kind of like the last big thing. So yes, I always say that there's 5 reasons why people, um, the most stressful things in their lives, and it usually has to do with death, illness, moving. So usually those two go hand in hand when
Mm.
we're dealing with a client, divorce, and job loss or job change. So those, you have moving in that, and usually there's one other aspect to it. So, like, we've dealt with people that are getting a divorce and they don't talk to each other. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take pictures of every item. You're going to give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. And if you both give me thumbs up, then we know we have to discuss this. If you give me a thumbs down, if both of you give me a thumbs down, then I'm going to donate it or whatever. So we've dealt with that. I also, over COVID, didn't know how my business would, what was going to happen. I ended up taking the mediation of Nebraska. So I am a certified mediator. Not that I want to sit down with people and discuss, you know, okay, how do you feel about that? What do I'm not that person. But when we come into a situation where there's a divorce or the kids are not getting along or something, I'll be like, okay, this person and this person, now this is how we're going to join together, and we're going to support your parents in the situation. Lots of times it's the kids. Sometimes the kids don't get along, or the kids don't get along with their parents, and then I'll be like, okay, this is a time that you've got to come together and be supportive. We had one client 2 weeks ago. The son showed up and he had been drinking in the middle of the afternoon. And I said to him, I mean, it was probably out of frustration too. I just said, you need to be here for your parents, and not, you need to try and be supportive of this situation. This is not working that you're here. So it was a conflict. It was a conflict with my staff. It was a conflict of his parents. And I was like, this is not working. So, take the upper hand and deal with the conflict. So, yeah.
Do you think that once people get moved, do you ever follow up with them? I didn't know if you see that they're like happy and settled in, and they're.
Yeah, it's kind of, sometimes you just gravitate towards people too, and a lot of maintenance. So we also, a small percentage of the business is holiday decorating. So sometimes I always, follow up and say, you know what, we'd love to come back and set up your holiday decorations. Or sometimes it's all just a little bit of maintenance here and there. But most of the time, if they're moving into a senior community, then they have the support of the senior community. Um, so, yeah, but it's, we have those clients that we help every holiday decorate and then organize. I mean, when you start dealing with Christmas decorations, sometimes if it's a big client, they need organization too after the holidays. So, like I see some of these people when we're moving, which is really a great feeling, is when community and they recognize you. And we were at a meet new staff or a new manager or a community maybe 3 weeks ago. And somebody was just getting some ice cream at their ice cream shop, and I walked by and I kind of peeked in just to see if she would recognize me, and she's like, Wendy. And so it's so fun. And she goes, I need you guys, I miss you guys, can you come over and help me with my filing cabinet? So there's always little things that we can tweak too.
That's really great.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. I love your business. It's so supportive, and it is also very productive. It's like such a great combination of the two, because I think that's where people get hung up, is just even making that first call can feel so overwhelming, from fear or unknowns or how it's going to go. How can we help people overcome that fear or concern just about making the first call?
Yes, I think I tell people a lot of times, because they do have fear, or they call me and say, I haven't had anybody in my space. Maybe it's more of I don't want to say a hoarding situation, but sometimes people call me and say, I haven't had anybody in my house for years, and this is really hard for me. And I can tell, usually I can tell that it's going to be more of a supportive idea, but I'm like, we're going to just try to make this as easy as possible. And we just try to soften it a little bit so it's not so like, here we're going to come. We're not going to throw all your stuff out on the lawn and make you decide. We're not going to do that. We're going to be very kind. I mean, trust us, friendship with us, and understand why you might be collecting items or why you have uh what your thoughts were when you collected a whole bunch of clowns or whatever your collection is. So we just try to make that uh, people understand. And sometimes we go to people's homes to a consultation, and they break down and say, I don't know what happened. I got sick. I lost my husband. And this is because then I just say, well, tell me anything you want that would help us understand your story, so we can make it easy. So Andrew, we're not like just putting things in a box. We are listening to their story, understanding who they are, and what seeing the side of them that has impacted all of us. So understanding that and just taking into heart what they have and understanding it is so important. So yeah, and sometimes it is hard when you have that first consultation. And I'm like, you know what? You can have a consultation now, even if you're not moving in 3 years. Let's come up with a plan. What's your retirement plan? What happens if something happens to you along the way? What happens if something happens to your spouse or your children? Or we all are going through this cycle of life where we have different paths, and so it can change all the time. Like, I had a client a couple weeks ago, and she was young, and she her husband passed away, and she has 7 kids. And I was like, oh, this is really hard. Passed away 2 years ago. And she said, I just need somebody to hold my hand to go through this closet and get rid of, I mean, not get rid of, but uh, with a heart, deal with his clothing and the items that represent him, and decide what I need to keep and what I need to have space for us to continue as a family.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard because we attach so many memories to the items that we have in our house.
Mm-hmm.
How do people decide what they're taking with them when they're making that move to senior living?
Sometimes I explain to them, like, they're coming from a 3,000 square foot house to a 800 square foot apartment, right? So let's take that into consideration. So for every one item that you save, you have to let go of 2 more items. It's a good way to do it. And sometimes it's like you go through a room and you can go through a guest bedroom, and most of that items in the guest bedroom you don't need, because it's kind of like a dumping zone, or your basement or the garage. So it's easy to get rid of those things from those areas. But sometimes it's like, okay, now we're going through your closet or the kitchen. People always want to save things from the kitchen. And then we talk about, what you're gonna need now. Like, I don't know. I can't tell you. If you need a casserole dish that's 11 by 14 or whatever, those big casserole dishes, we get them all the time. And I'm like, you're not going to need that at a senior community. You're going to have everything you want. People say, I want to take all my 5 crock pots because I make chili and on when there's a football game. I'm like, 5 crock pots worth, and you're going to have a party at the community during that time. So we kind of just help them decide what to get rid of, what you're going to have space for. And then sometimes they're like, nope, just pack it up, pack it up. And then we get there, and I would say that 9 out of 10 times my team will say, Wendy, we're not going to be able to fit it in here. And I just wait and watch them. And somehow, somehow they get most of it in there, but the crack pot might be in the bedroom, or, you know, there is some appliances that might be left out. But for the most part, if people don't get rid of things, and we're like, okay, now we have to have this conversation again and say, we needed to talk about what's going to matter, what you're going to use. This is your space now. It's not to entertain. It's not going to be where you're going to need space for all of your family.
It's really taking the things that fit this new life and this new lifestyle that they are going to have. I mean, it's so easy to go bigger and keep adding, but the other way, it just takes a lot more intention. I love that you suggested starting with the easy spaces and easy stuff first. I love that you've suggested creating piles for specific people where the senior may have someone in mind. I think it's really beneficial to give a person some room and space. It's not a mistake, but to proceed as they desire. Like, I want to take all 5 crock pots. Okay, let's pack them up and go. And then just having someone on the other side assess and realize that it's not going to work. Because I think as adult children, we're trying to save ourselves time and energy. Like, we know the work is going to fall back on us if it doesn't work out how we think it should go. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you tell me you're taking 5 crock pots, I know 5 crock pots can't fit. I'm going to fight you to the death right now in the house.
Right.
Taking the crock pots, but your team is willing to, like, let's just pack them up and let's let it play itself out a little bit. And then we can be there to support their decision.
Right. I have a situation where it was so fun. It was great. I mean, I love it because people are like, how did you do that? How did you make that? I'm like, it's because I'm not their kid. Yeah. But I had this one client call me, and he said, my mom has so much crystal and decor, and she thinks she has these beautiful couches that, you know, were from her mom. So he said, so can you come over and just look at what she has and then evaluate and put it in a layout? I'm like, yeah, I do that all the time and love doing that. I mean, that's probably where I take the role of doing the furniture placement and then also hanging pictures and things, just because I'm good at it. I've done it, and I have that design degree too. So she's like, it was Betty. And Betty says, I'm going to take all 3 couches. I'm like, okay, so where are you going to put these couches? Well, I don't know, but I'm like, well, the choice is you can either take a bed or a couch. You can't take all 3 couches. And then she's like, and I'm going to take all of these 5 hutches. Like, you have like a 600 square foot apartment. And I'm like, you are housing these items that you're not using. Okay, I have 4 kids and I have 12 grandkids that are going to come over. Well, they're not going to come over to your apartment. They're going to come to the community room or to the dining area. They created spots in these that you come out of your room. They don't want you to be stuck and sitting on each other on, you know, in these communities. And then she goes, well, I guess my younger grandkids can sit on the floor. I'm like, perfect. Have a bunch of folding chairs. If you think you need to have 20 guests in your small apartment, then have some folding chairs that you can bring out, but you don't need to have a place for everybody right now. So I'm like, live for you. This is your time in your life where you are going to be able to live your life and it's your space. And another situation was, oh, well, back to that, Betty. So the son, when I left, we had her plan all laid out. It took about an hour just to talk her out of these couches. But when I left, the son said, "How in the world did you do that?" I told her, like, well, I'm just not her son. So that makes a difference. And not that I'm credited because I have an interior design degree, but anybody else could have came into that situation and said, yeah, Betty, you're not going to be able to take all 3 couches. I mean, we all knew that, but she needed credibility of somebody that was going to tell her other than her son. But yes,
And
so I would
you can have the vision of, in that space, actually this couch and this one smaller hutch will be really beautiful and welcoming.
right, right. Well, and take a I want to say a tenth of what, take your treasures right now and use what you want and make it really, yeah, you can make it beautiful and really capture the ones that that you feel are important. Some of them, lots of times people are like, I like, on my mind, I think, oh, this is really, really pretty, or, I would say this would be better than taking this. But sometimes they're like, oh, no, I just bought that at a garage sale. Well, that's not important. But the item that, the little cup or something from a grandparent that had a crack in it that looked like it had been glued together, that's more important than the pretty lead crystal vase that they bought at a garage sale. So it's just a matter of where your mind will decide what you want. One other situation that I had is I had a client, and they were going to move into a 3-bedroom house, a 3-bedroom apartment, and some communities have that, but it's very limited. So she's like, I'm on the wait list. My husband just had a heart attack. And so we really need to get into a community because he has some health issues. And I'm like, well, she said, but it might be 3 years. And I'm like, wow, that's a long time to wait to have a 3-bedroom house. Or 3-bedroom apartment? Why 3 bedrooms? Well, I want to have a guest bedroom because my sister comes once a year to visit for a week. And I was like, okay, so how much difference in price is it from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom? Well, it was like $500 more a month. So you're going to pay $500 to have a room for your sister that comes for a week out of the year. Oh, that's interesting that you say that. I'm like, why don't we have a Haida bed or a Murphy bed in that you can spend $500 for that piece of furniture and combine 2 rooms, or get a hotel for her. I mean, it's gonna be 1 month's lease to get a hotel room than it is to have it all for 12 months. So this happened like 10 years ago, and every year she sends me a message and she says, thank you so much for what you've done. Like she is all about sending little cards and everything, and very good supporter of my business. So she's like, that was the best thought that nobody even suggested to me before. So
well, and sometimes these senior living communities have a guest suite that people can rent.
yeah.
So when I go visit my dad and stepmom in California, they have rooms where you can rent for by the night.
Right. Yeah, they do. And I think this community did too. But yeah, so and they're minimal costs
Right.
too.
And
Yeah.
beautifully appointed, and
They're
yeah.
just down the hall from, your family or whoever you're visiting too.
What are your parting words of wisdom for us? Like, if we have a parent who has just really, maybe they haven't quite embraced the idea of this move yet. Maybe the adult child is thinking, I really think it's time. The parent has just pumped the brakes. I've got too much stuff. I can't figure this out. how do we introduce you? How do we, I don't want to say convince, but it's like, how do we convince our parent to at least have a conversation with you so we can get the ball rolling, because time is ticking.
Yes. Oh, it's hard. Like I would say maybe even 3 weeks ago, I had the, um, more of a baby boomer generation saying that my dad passed away last year and my mom needs to move. And I'm like, let's make a consultation. And she was like, let's do this, let's go. And then we made a time. She's going to check with her mom. And the next day she sends me a message and says, my mom thinks that she's got it under control. And I said, well, in 6 months, just say in 6 months when you don't, when you feel like you need help, then we'll revisit. But it's hard. It's like, I want to say it's almost like an intervention, because sometimes the kids have to rally around them and say, okay, we see that this is an issue, or that things need to changes need to happen. You need more help, you need more support, you're depressed. Sometimes it's all about people, they retire and then they're depressed and they need the interaction of a community. So yeah, so then we just, sometimes they just have to make that, everybody has to be on board. So I always say, if the kids, sometimes it's the seniors contacting me and they don't want their kids to know. And I was like, why don't you want your kids to know? Is it because of money, or is it because, no, we're just don't want them to make the decisions for us. So, like sometimes there's valid reasons. Sometimes it's just hard. It's hard. So I just say, I just kind of check back and say, how's your mom doing? Being out your husband that just passed away unexpectedly. I mean, sometimes the grieving process, I always say give them 2 or 3 years just to grieve of those. Sometimes people need more. So be respectful of their time too, because maybe they just need to reflect for a while on their particular items. But it is hard. It's hard when there's so much stuff left, that lots of times when we're going through things, and why would my parents leave this? Why would they leave this for me? What am I supposed to do with 5 boxes of letters that my dad received from my mom, maybe when he was in the World War or whatever? Why would my mom leave this for me to go through? And I'm like, you don't have to. So I think sometimes, in the flip side of it, like us as children dealing with our parents' stuff, we get angry because they leave us so much stuff. But then the other side of it is like the senior community, they need to understand that this does make us angry.
Literally just did a Facebook Live about this. Like, we have to step out of this space of denial that we are not all aging and that these things are not going to happen to us. Like,
Right.
as people who are, I mean, I'm about to be 52. So what, I'm 3 years away from being classified as a senior. And I need to decide what I want my future to look like. So we can't just
Right.
give up our responsibility, because then that takes away your decision-making power.
Oh yeah.
Ignoring
Yes.
it.
Yes. And I think, like the one situation was my son is going to want this roll top desk. And I'm like, really, who wants a roll top desk? I mean, there's got to be people out there that might want it, but they're heavy, they don't serve a purpose, they collect trinkets and trash, I call it, instead of treasures. They just are not usable, and that they think that those are a nice piece of furniture. Yeah, if you want to put somebody and break their back in the meantime, they're heavy. So I think as you know, like we as like, I don't know, this my generation, I'm almost 50, so my generation, I always say, I kind of like put my foot down and say, Mom, I do not need that. I don't need that. If you're giving it to me, remember, Mom, that I'm going to make a choice what I do with it next. And then she's like, oh, but she might say, Dylan might use it when he has a house of his own. And I'm like, okay, well, it's my decision to make that. I'm not going to store it for 3 years until he graduates. So, yeah. I mean, the littlest things. Like, why would you bring me 3 bottles of alcohol from grandma? My grandma passed away, and so they're still going through her stuff. And it's almost like the worst people to work for is your family and friends.
100%.
But I had to step back and say, and then, you as my clients know that it's hard to work with your kids. So I have to step back and say, okay, my family wants to deal with this. When they're ready for my expert knowledge or whatever, then I can step in. But no, I don't need grandma's uh, alcohol that might be 20 years old. I don't need it. So, they walk out the door, and here the first thing I do is dump the alcohol. Like, I'm not going to drink it. Nobody here is going to drink it.
I think this has been really helpful. I think I especially obviously love that you help people with that move to senior living, because it is such a big decision and it is a hard decision. And so often people put it off, put it off, put it off. And so then it's somebody else making the decision for them. So having you as part of that mix and that move just seems like gold.
Yes. So the way the business is working now is that I was always on the jobs. I'm doing everything. I'm doing, the moves, and I'm on the job. And now I feel like this year we have expanded, and we hired 2 move managers that are going to take on the role of engaging with the client. And then, you might see me pop in at the beginning to introduce, and then at the end to do more of the layout and the design work. So just kind of handing the baton between us and knowing who we are and what we do. And we all have a role, and people don't know that. When we are our team, I'll put one person that's a really good at packing at the beginning, and then somebody else will be the receiving at the other end. So we create these teams that are powerful, that one person is working with the client, the other person is packing, the other person is dealing with the donations. And so it just goes really fast and really smooth. And people often say, how long does it take? And I'm like, well, if you're a fast decision maker, we can go through a couple rooms in your house in a morning. No, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, we can. If you want to make some fast decisions, we'll help you through that. So yeah, so I'm excited for our growth, and hopefully you'll see not only one van hanging out in the community this year. We'll have 2 with our move managers, and really thanks for I want to say our clients and our supports, and thank you for the senior communities for always encouraging and recommending us and creating that smooth transition when people move. So yeah, I'm excited for
I'm really
growth.
excited for you. Yes. So thank you so much, Wendy, for coming on today. This has been a great conversation.
Yes, well, thank you for what you do, because creating this path for people to navigate their seniors through the change of life is so important. So I appreciate what you're doing and what you're creating. And together we can help seniors by you helping them with their path, and then facilitating a move. So thank you again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for being on.